Hey everyone. A couple of days ago I posted a video about some of the practices that I've been implementing to kind of cultivate some change in my life. One of the things I realized I didn't dive into too much is a subject related to Enneagram. I've been posting some Enneagram memes, but essentially Enneagram has been a really great tool to help me understand my personality a little bit better, what a healthy version of my personality looks like, to recognize what unhealthy habits of my personality look like. And more than that, help me understand the personality of the people that I interact with. So I thought I would do another rambling. I had some people reach out and say they enjoy watching the first video, so I thought I might just kind of go in and break down some of the practices that I talked about just a little bit more in depth. I was introduced to the Enneagram through work. We started using it at Tipsy Elves as a way to build some sort of foundational elements to improve our communication. And for me, it has been incredibly valuable to understand myself and to really help strengthen and build some healthier communication at work. I'm going to kind of talk about a couple websites that you can reference if you want to find out what your Enneagram type is and to understand a little bit more about it. But I'm going to kind of talk in depth with some examples of my personality type according to the Enneagram based on this book, The Road Back to You. So just as a disclaimer for anyone who's maybe not super religious, the roots of Enneagram are kind of based in Christian faith. So this book specifically has a lot of religious undertones. I think whether that resonates with you or not, there's a lot of meaningful content to the Enneagram itself. And if God doesn't resonate with you, I think you can replace that concept with the concept of the universe or whatever larger entity being you want to believe in, or just ignore that altogether, and there's still some really good concepts with the Enneagram. So to start, you need to understand what Enneagram type you are. There are 9 personality types according to the Enneagram, 1 through 9, and each has a variant within it. The website that we used at work that I used and tried to manipulate multiple times and still got the exact same response for my Enneagram type is called eclecticenergies.com/Enneagram. There are 2 tests. There's a classic Enneagram test and one with an instinctual variant. That's a faster one. It's still like 100 questions, but it doesn't take that long. And at the end of it, it will tell you what your dominant type is and your wing. So there's 1 through 9 types, and then you're dominant in 1, and then you have a wing where you have traits of the personality type on either side of you. So like me, I'm an Enneagram type 8 with a wing 7. And I'll get into more of what that means. A really good online reference for just a quick overview of the different personality types is the Enneagram Institute. You can just Google that, and it's going to be the first. It's going to be the first response that populates up, and it goes into a general overview, and then goes into compatibility with other types, misidentification, talks about relationships too. There's some, you're gonna feel personally victimized when you read this stuff. And for me, at least, that was the case. I was like, holy shit, this stuff is kind of incredibly too true. So eclectic energies to get a quick result of what your Enneagram type is. And that's just a place to start. People sometimes find that they're misidentified. So the more you kind of understand about the Enneagram, the more you can kind of understand for yourself if it's your correct type. For me, I'm very, very clear my type, and I think you'll realize that when you go into it. And then Enneagram Institute to understand more about the different Enneagram types. So getting into the book itself, I just want to kind of touch on a few highlights of the book, sort of the introduction parts before I go into some of the observations of my personality type. And I'm hoping that as much as this has helped me understand myself, maybe it might get any of you that know me more insight into who I am and my personality, and kind of what drives me and how I interact with people. So The first little quote I want to touch on kind of relates to the power of the Enneagram. It has to do with self-knowledge. Most folks assume they understand who they are when they don't. They don't question the lens through which they see the world. Where it came from, how it shaped their lives, or even the vision of reality it gives them is distorted or true. Even more troubling, most people aren't aware of how things that helped them survive as kids are now holding them back as adults. They're asleep. Now, an important caveat there, I think, anyone who's been through therapy or has kind of been more introspective has been through a process where they identify maybe traumas that occurred while they're as a child. And I think it's really important to not look at that as an excuse or get frustrated by that, but look at it from a more objective standpoint of what insight can I gain from this. For me, I was just kind of a very mature kid, so in a lot of ways I don't think I was much of a childish kid, and I think that sort of relates to how my personality was formed a little bit. The next quote is, "What we don't know about ourselves can and will hurt us, not to mention others." And I think that, if you watched my video about the changes I've made and kind of what the catalyst was behind that, I think that that's really reigns true for me. I was really projecting because I didn't really understand myself. So it was not only hurting me, but then it was hurting people around me because I was lashing out. Sort of just jumping around here. Sooner or later, we must distinguish between what we are not and what we are. We must accept the fact that we are not what we would like to be. We must cast off our false exterior self like the cheap and showy garment it is. We must find our real self in all its elemental poverty, but also in its great and very simple dignity, created to be the child of God and capable of loving with something of God's own sincerity and unselfishness. Again there, you could say universe, whatever resonates for you. Within the context of the book, the author is kind of explaining his journey to the Enneagram, and as part of that, he underwent sort of a mentorship with a pastor, and as the pastor was essentially trying to help him gain a better understanding of the Enneagram, they sort of said this prayer, and I thought it was kind of powerful. May you recognize in your life the presence, power, and light of your soul. May you realize that you are never alone, that your soul and its brightness and belonging connects you intimately with the rhythm of the universe. May you have respect for your individuality and difference. May you realize that the shape of your soul is unique, that you have a special destiny here, that behind the facade of your life there is something beautiful and eternal happening. May you learn to see yourself with the same delight, pride, and expectation with which God sees you in every moment. I love that. A note on childhood here too. As little kids, we instinctually place a mask called personality over parts of our authentic self to protect us from harm and make our way in the world. Ironically, the term personality is derived from the Greek word for mask, persona, reflecting our tendency to confuse the mask we wear with our true selves. I recently read something too that sort of touched on this same sentiment related to dance, play, expression. It was Brene Brown, obviously. In her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, she talks about how we should cultivate play, and that as young children, one of our first forms of expression is to express ourselves through dance and movement, even before we speak. You see videos online of babies who are kind of like jamming out to music in the car. That's just so innately part of our authentic selves, and is a perfect example of how we grow and we're conditioned by society or upbringing, that we kind of remove ourselves from that authentic version of ourselves and put on a mask to quote unquote fit in with society. Before we can become who we really are, we must become conscious of the fact that the person who we think we are here and now is at best an imposter and stranger. So really, I think all of these points to me reinforce how beneficial it is that the more we can understand ourselves, we can let that true, authentic person come through and take the mask off. So I'm going to dive into my type a little bit. I guess just to give an overview of the different types. Type 1 is the reformer, the rational, idealistic type. They're principled, purposeful, self-controlled, and perfectionistic. Perfectionistic is kind of a key attribute to the reformer. Type 2 is the helper. They are caring, interpersonal, they're generous, people-pleasing, and possessive. Their biggest flaw tends to be that they will put others ahead of them and will not voice their needs even when it hurts them. They will still put others' needs ahead of them. The type 3 is the achiever. They're success-oriented and pragmatic. They're adaptive, excelling, driven, and image conscious. So the 3 is incredibly driven, but they are very concerned with how others perceive their drive and kind of cultivate their acceptance through the eyes of others. Number 4 is the individualist. They're sensitive and withdrawn. They're expressive, dramatic, self-absorbed, and temperamental. This is like a very artistic, creative, I think hipsters might be stereotyped as an individualist. Type 5s are the investigator. They're intense and cerebral. They're perceptive, innovative, secretive, and isolated. They want to research everything. Think people in finance and accounting, incredibly detail-oriented, want to know a vast amount of information. The person who travels and goes to a museum and needs to understand the history of the museum, understand every artifact, why it's been there, how long it's been there, its origin, that's the investigator. 6 is the loyalist. They're committed, security-oriented type. They're engaging, responsible, but anxious and suspicious. Number 7 is the enthusiast. The busy, fun-loving type, spontaneous, versatile, distractible, and scattered. This is the person that's always down for a good time, not a long time. I see in the movie, I can't even remember, but he has a tattoo that says no regrets and it's spelled incorrectly. And the guy's like, no regrets, not even one letter. He's like, nah, man, no regrets. That guy's the enthusiast, and the enthusiast is my wing, so I have characteristics of that personality type involved, but 8 is my dominant personality type, the challenger. The powerful, dominating type, self-confident, decisive, willful, and confrontational. Anyone that works with me will know that is me to a T, but I also have this like spontaneous, outgoing side too. Which is why my wing is the 7 and not the 9, because the 9 is the peacemaker. They are not confrontational. They're agreeable, reassuring, receptive, and they're prone to intense anxiety and insecurity. They will detach and withdraw in the face of conflict. Not me. So getting into my type, the challenger. Healthy 8s are great friends, exceptional leaders, and champions of those who cannot fight on their own behalf. That's why I get worked up as hell about Trump, because when I see people being bullied, it pisses me the fuck off, and I'm going to say something about it. They have the intelligence, courage, and stamina to do what others can't say can't be done. They have learned to use power in the right measure at the right times, and they are capable of collaborating and valuing their contributions of others. They understand vulnerability and even embrace it at times. That's been a huge thing for me, especially at work. If you watch the other video, essentially, I think kind of a central theme of all the changes I've made have come from a place of allowing myself to be vulnerable. And at work, I was very hard-edged. I'm at work is work, I'm a manager, I'm giving you feedback, you need to listen to me, I don't understand why you're frustrated, why you think I need to like ask how you are, very basic things like that I've now realized are very foundational pieces I need to have relationships at work. Anger is the dominant emotion in 8's life. 8s assume others are untrustworthy until they're proven themselves otherwise. I guess another way to put that would be operate with a guilty until proven innocent. So probably would have done real well in old school England. And I think there's a point coming up here that the 8 personality type doesn't, I never understood that. I've always understood that I'm a very kind of heart on my sleeve, but any little frustration I naturally express as anger, even if I'm not angry. It's just how the emotion comes out. In the book, the book says this here. In my experience, 8s don't see themselves as angry people. In fact, they are genuinely surprised when they learn other people experience them as intimidating, insensitive, and domineering. I always kind of felt that I had very good intentions, was a really personable person, and when I really stepped back and started reflecting and got to a place where I was ready to take ownership for how I actually behaved, I was able to finally see that. And even very recently, one of my coworkers gave me some feedback that, you know, when I'm frustrated, it's palpable, and that it very directly impacts their mood and frame of mind. So it's something I have to be very, very aware of. In an 8's mind, everyone else has opinions while they have the facts. That's something else that I've had to really kind of keep in check at work, because my tendency is to be very confrontational. I at times feel like I need to be an advocate of everyone, and in everyone that's not asked for me to be an advocate. So I need to be an advocate of the brand. So I think to break through, I need to be very forward, and you need to listen to me because I'm right. And that has gotten me in some untenable situations. 8s value truth. And this is really interesting because I definitely do this. A confrontation can expose what's really happening behind the scene, force people's real intentions or hidden agendas into the open, or reveal whether people can stand their ground and be trusted. I do that a lot. If I sense someone's withholding, I will push their buttons and force them to say what they're really saying. Problem with that is although I get the truth out of that, I have to balance, is the strain on the relationship and the dynamic worth it in that situation? And most times it's not. Sometimes it's necessary. You have to take that there. But more often than not, that has hurt the situation, even though I've been able to get the truth. Some cases it's helped, because then we've actually been able to get to a baseline where, okay, we can have a conversation now because we have all of our thoughts out on the table. But the talk style of 8s is commanding. Often their sentences are littered with imperatives and end with exclamation marks. Whereas most people experience conflict as anything but invigorating, 8s get their energy from it. My boss has given me feedback that I speak in absolutes. Like, when I express my opinion, it is not an opinion. I state it as fact, and it's a dare to disagree with me. Again, I might get my point across, but I realize that I have to be very present in those moments and remove the absolutes. Instead of we have to do this, I'm shifting it to, I think it's really important that I advocate fiercely for this. I still have very strong dialogue, but it's less certain and more of an openness to it, or at least that's what I'm trying. 8s don't feel that they have to be the person in control. They just don't want to be controlled. I am absolutely a person, if you tell me I have to do something, I'm going to tell you to fuck right off and do the opposite just because you're not going to tell me what to do. In a work environment, that can be a little challenging and tough. So for me, I focused on how can I have healthy communication. So if I'm feeling instances where I'm backed in a corner or being talked at, how can I open up a dialogue to help them understand my point of view so we can have a productive conversation. 8s want people to challenge them right back. They want others to be their equals and stand up for what they believe. So I've started doing something very interesting at work. The people that I work directly with, I've set a very clear expectation. If you're frustrated with me, I expect and demand that you call me out on my shit. If I sense that you're holding back, I'm setting up the expectation with you that I'm going to call you out on that and make you call me out on it. And that's created a really good foundation for our group specifically for open communication, because through that, we've kind of worked through the process of kind of forced exposure therapy to communication. So if someone's pissed at me, they're just going to say it to me. So issues don't ever build up. The release is constantly there. And if they've given me feedback on something multiple times, then they're not afraid to be like, yo, this is not the first time I said this. You need to pull your head out of your ass and listen to what I'm saying. Most 8s live by a rule of fire, aim, ready. I am doing that less, but I still do it, where I have such a strong opinion that I will immediately just put it out there, and then when I process a little further, I realize that I put it all out there in absolutes. I wasn't flexible, my language was very strong, and it wasn't inviting from a conversation. It was very confrontational. So I'm working on being present to not doing that, but if I am, then I'm immediately following it up and calling myself out on it and reframing it in a way that is healthier and more conversational so that I don't kill the dialogue before it even starts. 8s will respect you if you hold your ground with them, and once confrontation is over, it's as if nothing happened. And that is so true. For me, I do express frustration as anger. So thankfully, I've cultivated this really great partnership with my boss, where he knows that that's how I process emotion. So I will hit him up and be like, hey, you know me, I'm pissed the fuck off at something. I need to let it out, release it, and you know I'll be good. So I'll like ramble on about something, and in that process, I'm working through to the rational thought process of where I need to get. And by the end of it, I'm there, I've released it, it's gone. To me, it's like nothing happened. And I'm grateful that I found someone that I can communicate like that with. So it's been a huge help for me to work through those moments of frustration. Information is power, so 8s want to know all the facts. Holy shit. The company I work for is good size, but there's about, just under 30 of us. We work in an open office, and I can't help myself. I want to know what's going on in all parts of the business, and I've worked on that a little bit, but I used to be very adamant that I felt burned if I didn't understand all the details about stuff. And what I've come to realize is if I cultivate healthier communication, people are more inclined to just naturally talk to me and share to me, because instead of being faced with confrontation, there's just an open dialogue going on. 8s want to be in control. 8s can walk into a room where you're sitting, and within minutes, with their full-throated voice, larger-than-life gesticulations, and unsolicited but empathetically offered opinions will begin to assert control over the environment like an occupying power. I'm using a lot of examples at work just because this is where I put this into play most often, but this is something I really had to work on in meetings, because I will talk, I will be the dominating force, and it gets into problems. One of the owners of our brand is very forward in his thoughts, and we would get to a place where we would be talking to each other, over each other, having a conversation simultaneously, because we were both speaking at the same time, and everyone else in the meeting would just be sitting back like, are you fucking kidding me right now? Here he goes again. Like, I'm just like talking louder, faster, going on, and no healthy communication is happening, and I'm domineering the entire environment, and then no one else feels like they can talk, and then the entire purpose of the meeting's been defeated. They don't want you to draft off their energy. They want you to bring your own. They love debates, risky adventures, and getting people riled up. I'm laughing because I have to, because I do that so often at work. And guess what? People don't fucking like that shit. I used to think I was getting somewhere because I would look and say, oh, I got you riled up, we got dialogue going on, and I would just like totally gloss over the fact that everyone was pissed at me. I was like, oh, we're talking. Yeah, we are, but how well are we actually talking? Eights are eager to support people who want to realize their potential. They know how to empower and bring out the best in others, and they'll block or tackle to help someone get to where they want to go in life. All they ask is that you show up and give 150% of yourself to reaching the goal. And that's something else I've kind of had to realize. I read an article recently about the danger of demanding passion at work. For some people, work is just work. It's not their end-all be-all life. For me, I don't have a family or a lot of responsibilities, so when we're busy, I'm able to focus my entire energy to work, and because my personality is naturally a little bit more committal to that like high energy, big grandiose over my head projects, I'm naturally inclined to operate that way. But hey, not everyone is like that, so I've had to realize that and make sure I throttle on that front. Because 8's antagonism can sabotage their relationships. Holy shit, there's some insight. By regularly testing authority, being overly blunt and insensitive, acting in a confrontational manner, insisting their perspective is always the right one, or acting impulsively, 8s don't protect themselves from attack, from losing their grip on control, or from experiencing emotional harm and betrayal. Rather, they invite it. Definitely have been guilty of that. And I think just all the changes I've made in general have helped me kind of be in a more grounded place. And because I've created more space through meditation, through therapy, exercise, all of that kind of combined, I've gotten to a point where I can step back and kind of catch myself before I get into that place. But if you ask the owners of Tipsy Hills, they would definitely tell you that I've done a little of that in the past, and it has not been super helpful. Thankfully, they have been very gracious in my attempts to talk up and talk with them. And even when I push them, we've always been able to come out of it, and have gotten to a place where I think we're in a really, really healthy place. But it's definitely, I've created some many eye roll moments from them, I'm sure. The book goes on to talk about how 8s operate at work, and all of this rings so true. As employees, 8s can be huge assets or a lot of work, and they're usually both. If you're fortunate enough to have an 8 on your team and want them to perform well, keep the lines of communication open and don't surprise them by changing the rules or announcing a sudden change of plans. 8s are highly intuitive and read the world from their gut, so they can smell deception or a lack of integrity from a mile away. If they trust you, you've got it made. If they don't, sleep with one eye open. That's a big thing for me. Like, especially this again is at work. We're in an open office environment. I can sniff shit out. If something's going on, I'm not a fucking fool, and I'm gonna call it out. And oftentimes that's just unintentional oversights. And before, I used to come in full bore, making assumptions in absolute statements, like, how dare you keep me out? And it's like, this either doesn't fucking concern you, or we're getting there, just slow your roll. 8s always want to know who has the power, so they will consistently challenge and test authority. So you have to set limits, provide regular, honest feedback, and establish clear and reasonable boundaries. 8 will follow a leader so long as it's clear the leader knows where they're heading. They have no patience for a leader who waffles or lacks the moxie to commit to a course of action and move. Because they're looking for a strong leader, you have to either cowboy up and provide them with clear direction, or put someone in charge of them who has more gumption than you. And this is actually very true. I will test the limits because I need to understand what the limit is. Tell me I'm at my limit? Okay, I just need to know. understood. A lot of times that's well-intentioned, but if there's an instance where the dynamic is unhealthy, I will continue to push that, and that's where I have to stop in those moments and realize that that is not serving serving either of our paths forward. So 8s with a 7 wing can be a wild combination. They're outgoing, energetic, and fun, reflecting the 7's sunny personality. They're also ambitious, impulsive, and sometimes reckless. The 8s live life to the fullest. They are the most energetic of all numbers and the most entrepreneurial. The 7 energy masks the more wary 8, so they are more social and more gregarious than other 8s. For stress and security, 8s move to the healthy side of 2, insecurity. So what that means is when I am kind of the healthiest version of myself, when I'm able to assert myself in a vulnerable manner, I'm going to emulate healthy traits of the 2, which is helping, outgoing, supportive, putting your needs out there and being very aware of that. 8s in this space don't insist their beliefs and opinion are absolutely right, but learn to listen and values other people's points of view. What I'm really excited about in my life is I feel that I'm finding more and more instances where I'm finding myself in that sense of security and seeing myself emulating some of those two responses. We are finite creatures trying to manage an overfull tank of infinite desires, which is a lot to manage. I have spoken to this before too, but I'm an all or nothing person, and I come up with very grand plans and I'm just going to go for it, and then that doesn't work out. So learning how to live more in balance has been really helpful. For me, I know that was kind of a lot of random rambling. If you want to learn more about Enneagram, find your personality type and then follow Enneagram meme accounts on Instagram, and you will be personally offended over and over and over in the best way possible. The Enneagram memes have actually been a really awesome way for me to kind of continue to cultivate my understanding of the Enneagram. And I think it can be a really great tool to help understand yourself better and help others. I'm definitely still learning myself, and every day I try to implement utilizing this in my interactions at work, outside of work, but I'm definitely a work in progress. Anyway, I think that's kind of my rambling about Enneagram. If that's intriguing to you, definitely check it out. I found a lot of value in it, and I definitely, if you have any questions, I will humbly attempt to answer, but I think the Google and any books you can find on the subject are probably going to be a much better reference than me. All I can do is testify to how it's helped me. Anyway, that's all on the Enneagram. If you've got to this point of, 33 minutes, I guess thanks for sticking around and listening to my thoughts. Later.